In the dead of night, by the banks of the Jabbok River, a lone man found himself locked in a struggle that defies explanation. Jacob, the deceiver, the runaway, the father of a nation, wrestled with a mysterious figure until the break of dawn. But who was this opponent? An angel sent from heaven? A man cloaked in mystery? Or God himself, stepping into human form? This was no ordinary fight. It was a battle of flesh and spirit, of destiny and identity. And when it was over, Jacob would walk away limping, but forever transformed. His name changed, his future rewritten, his encounter still echoing through thousands of years of faith and history. What happened at Peniel would mark Jacob forever. Stay with me until the very end, because this story is unlike anything else in Scripture, and its meaning might change the way you see God and yourself. To truly grasp the weight of this midnight struggle, we must step back into Jacob's life, into the long shadows of his past. Jacob's story began in conflict. From the moment of his birth, he grasped the heel of his brother Esau, a symbol of his relentless struggle for blessing, for power, for identity. Years later, he deceived his blind father Isaac, stealing the blessing meant for Esau. The betrayal was so deep, so cutting, that Esau swore he would kill him. And so Jacob fled, a fugitive running from both his brother's wrath and his own guilt. For 20 long years, Jacob lived in exile, serving his uncle Laban in a foreign land. Those years were not easy. They were filled with hardship, trickery, and endless labor. Yet through it all, Jacob prospered. His family grew, his flocks multiplied, his name became known. But prosperity could not erase the shadow of the past. And the day came when Jacob could no longer run. News reached him, Esau was coming, and not alone. He was bringing 400 men. To Jacob, this was no welcome party. It was an army. Imagine the scene. Jacob with his wives, his children, his servants, his animals, everything he owned, now facing the possibility of destruction. The weight of fear pressed on him like a stone. Would Esau finally exact his revenge? Would Jacob's entire household be swept away in a single night of blood? Desperate, Jacob devised a plan. He divided his camp into two, hoping that if Esau attacked one group, the other might escape. He sent ahead gifts, herds of animals, wave after wave, hoping to soften Esau's heart with generosity. And then, Jacob prayed, not a prayer of ritual, but of desperation. He reminded God of his promises. He begged for deliverance. He confessed his unworthiness. He laid bare his fear. And after arranging all these things, after sending his family and possessions across the river, Jacob was left alone. Alone in the silence of the night, by the waters of the Jabbok. Alone with nothing left to cling to but his faith and his fear. It was in this moment of solitude, this moment of utter vulnerability, that destiny would come to meet him. Not in the form of a comforting dream, but in the form of a mysterious figure, stepping into the night to wrestle him until dawn. And friend, let me ask you, if you believe that faith always finds a way, don't just pass by this moment. Subscribe now and walk with us through this story, because what happens next will not only change Jacob's life, it may just change how you see your own. And then, without warning, the silence of the night was broken. The text tells us simply, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. No introduction, no explanation, no name, just a man. But who was this figure appearing out of the shadows? Scripture doesn't say. He does not arrive with greetings. He does not speak. He does not reveal his purpose. He simply strikes and a fight begins. Do not mistake this for a dream or a mere vision. The struggle was real. Dust rose from the riverbank. Sweat poured from Jacob's brow. His muscles strained. His hands grasped. His breath grew heavy. This was no metaphor. It was the clash of bodies, the grip of limbs, the rolling of men in the dirt and stones of the Jabbok. Jacob was not wrestling with his imagination. He was wrestling with a presence, powerful and unrelenting. And it lasted all night. Who could this be? An intruder, perhaps? A bandit? No, the struggle was too strange, too purposeful, too overwhelming to be ordinary. The opponent is described simply as a man. But this was no common man. Every movement carried supernatural force. Every grip pressed with unearthly strength. Jacob, the one who had wrestled with men his whole life, who had deceived, who had fought to survive, now faced an adversary he could not overcome, and yet he would not let go. Why? Because in this mysterious figure, Jacob knew he was facing more than flesh. He was facing destiny itself. Across centuries, this encounter has baffled scholars, rabbis, and theologians alike. Who was the man of Peniel? Jewish interpretation. Some rabbis teach that Jacob was wrestling with the guardian angel of Esau, a spiritual representative of the brother he feared. If true, then this fight was not only physical, but symbolic of Jacob's lifelong conflict with his twin. Guilt, rivalry, and fear made flesh in the darkness of the night. Christian interpretation. Many Christian scholars believe this was no ordinary angel at all, but a Christophany, an appearance of Christ himself before the incarnation. Why? Because Jacob later declares, "I have seen God face to face." The one who wrestled him was not just a messenger, but the very presence of God in human form. Other perspectives. Still others see this figure as a test, a divine trial meant to push Jacob to his breaking point, to strip away his self-reliance, to force him to cling to faith rather than cunning. The fight was not with a stranger. It was with God's will, the endless struggle. And so they wrestled, minute after minute, hour after hour. Dust caked Jacob's face, pain shot through his body, but he clung tightly, refusing to surrender. Each thrust and hold was not only a physical battle, it was the wrestling of his soul. In every grip, Jacob was facing more than a man. He was facing his past, the deception of Esau, the lies to his father, the years of exile. He was facing his fear, the army of 400 men waiting on the horizon. He was facing his identity. Jacob, the deceiver, the one who grasps, would he remain the same, or would he be changed? Each moment, Jacob is fighting not only a man, but his past, his fears, and his destiny. And though he is wounded, though he is weary, he refuses to let go. For Jacob knows, the one who holds on may yet receive a blessing. The fight raged on through the long hours of the night. Jacob, exhausted, drenched in sweat, clinging with every ounce of strength left in him. And then, in a single, shocking moment, everything changed. The mysterious figure reached out, and with just one touch, Jacob's hip was torn from its socket. In an instant, he was crippled. No ordinary opponent could do this. No ordinary man dislocates bone with the mere press of a hand. This was power beyond human. Divine power. The pain must have been excruciating. A searing fire shot through Jacob's body. His leg collapsed beneath him. Every nerve screamed for release. And yet, Jacob did not let go. With trembling arms and a broken body, he clung all the tighter. He cried out through the agony, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Think of that. Crippled, defeated, and still he refused to release his grip. Jacob, the man who had always seized, always fought, always taken, now seizes something more, the blessing of God himself. The prophet Hosea gives us a glimpse into this moment. Hosea 12 verses 3 to 4 says, "In the womb he grasped his brother's heel. As a man he struggled with God. He struggled with the angel and overcame him. He wept and begged for his favor." Did you hear that? Jacob, the fighter, the schemer, the stubborn one, was weeping. In his brokenness, in his agony, he begged. And yet, he held on. This is not just Jacob's story. It is Israel's story. In that long night by the river, Jacob embodies what would become the very identity of a nation. Struggling with God, wrestling with his will, clinging even through pain, even through weakness, even through tears, until the blessing comes. This is why the name Israel was born from this moment. Not from triumph, but from struggle. Not from conquest, but from endurance. And isn't that true of faith itself? That sometimes blessing only comes after the breaking? That sometimes God's greatest gift is found not in victory, but in the wound that humbles us. Jacob's hip throbbed with pain, but his soul refused to surrender. And now the question turns to you. When your faith is tested, when the struggle leaves you limping, when the weight of life presses down until you can barely breathe, will you cling to God, or will you let go? Would you hold on to faith when it hurts, or would you let go? Comment below with your honest answer, because the truth is, your answer may define your destiny, just as it defined Jacob's. The night was almost over. The dawn began to break, and as the first light of day spread across the Jabbok, Jacob's struggle reached its climax. A new name, a new destiny, a new identity. But first, the mysterious figure would speak. The night had stretched endlessly. Jacob's body trembled with exhaustion. His hip throbbed with unrelenting pain. His arms shook from clinging too long, but still he refused to let go. And then, as the horizon began to glow with the first light of dawn, the mysterious figure spoke at last. "Let me go, for the day breaks." Think about that. An all-powerful being, the one who crippled Jacob with a touch, now asks Jacob to release him. Why? Why not simply break free? Why not disappear into the morning mist? Perhaps this was no ordinary request. Perhaps it was a test of Jacob's resolve. Would he let go? Or would he hold on, even to the very end? Jacob's refusal. And Jacob answered with words that echo through the centuries. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." There it is. A declaration not of arrogance, but of desperation. Jacob was done with schemes, with deception, with running. Now he clung not to trickery or strength, but to the one who held his destiny. This was Jacob's breaking point and his breakthrough. His cry was both a confession and a demand. "I cannot win, cannot escape, I cannot survive, unless you bless me." And then, the figure asked him, "What is your name?" Of course he knew, but Jacob had to say it aloud. "Jacob," he confessed. "Jacob, the supplanter, the deceiver, the one who grasps at what is not his." For years, that name had defined him, his past, his failures, his shame. And in that moment, everything changed. The figure declared, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men, and have prevailed." Do you hear it? This was not just a fight. It was a rebirth. From Jacob the deceiver to Israel, the one who struggles with God, or as some translate it, the one through whom God prevails. His identity was transformed, his destiny rewritten. The deceiver became the father of a nation. Shaken, wounded, and forever changed, Jacob named the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved." Can you imagine it? To wrestle all night with God himself. And to survive? The limp in Jacob's step would forever testify to that encounter. A mark of weakness, but also a mark of divine strength. And now we are left with the question, if Jacob wrestled with God and lived, what does that mean for us today? If the Almighty himself allowed Jacob to struggle, to question, to cling through the night, could it be that our own struggles are not signs of God's absence, but of his presence? Could it be that the wounds we carry are not punishments, but the very marks of his blessing? Do not miss this. Jacob walked away forever changed, and so must we. If you believe God still meets us in our struggles, in our sleepless nights, in our tears, in our desperate prayers, then subscribe right now. Don't walk away unchanged, because what Jacob found at Peniel might be waiting for you too. The sun rose on Jacob, now Israel, limping as he went. But that limp was not defeat. It was victory. It was the sign that he had met God face to face and lived. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The sun rose over the horizon, spilling light across the land of Canaan. And there, by the banks of the Jabbok, Jacob emerged from the shadows of the night. But he did not walk as he had before. He limped. Every step was marked by weakness, by pain, but also by memory. For that limp was not just the scar of a fight. It was the mark of an encounter with the divine. the limp as a sign. To the outside world, Jacob may have looked broken, diminished. Yet in reality, that limp was his victory. It was the proof that he had wrestled with God and lived. From that day on, Jacob carried two things everywhere he went: the weakness in his hip and the strength of a blessing that could never be taken away. And because of this, Israel, Jacob's descendants, carried the memory too. To this day, they do not eat the tendon attached to the hip, remembering the night their forefather wrestled with God. Every meal, every tradition whispered the same truth. Sometimes, God leaves us with a mark so that we will never forget him. And then came the moment Jacob had feared for so long, his meeting with Esau. But this time, Jacob did not approach as a deceiver, not as a manipulator, not as a man trying to control the outcome. He approached limping, humbled, broken, yet blessed. And what happened? The brother who once vowed to kill him ran to embrace him. The shadow of revenge melted into reconciliation. Jacob's struggle with God prepared him for peace with man. The lesson of struggle. What then is the lesson of Peniel? That true blessing does not always come in the way we expect. Sometimes it comes through struggle, sometimes through surrender, sometimes through the wounds that leave us limping. But it is in that very place, the breaking, the pain, the weakness, that God shapes us, changes us, and calls us by a new name: connection to modern life. And isn't this our story too? Every one of us wrestles with fear, with doubt, with guilt, with temptation, with the shadows of our past. We wrestle in the dark, asking questions no one else can hear. And sometimes the very struggle we fear the most is the place where God meets us face to face. The limp you carry may not be a sign of defeat. It may be the very sign of God's blessing. Because Jacob walked away weaker in body, but stronger in spirit. And sometimes it takes being broken to finally be made whole. Jacob's limp was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of Israel's destiny. A nation born not from triumph, but from a struggle with God. And just like Jacob, you too may walk away from your struggles marked forever. The only question is, will you see that mark as a wound or as a blessing? Jacob walked away from the banks of the Jabbok forever changed. His hip was shattered. His walk would never be the same, yet his destiny was secured. He faced God that night, and he was never the same again. The deceiver became Israel. The runaway became a patriarch. The fearful man became the father of a nation. And all of it began, in the silence of the night, with a mysterious struggle that ended in blessing. But here is the question that echoes from Peniel to this very moment. When your night of wrestling comes, when your faith is tested, when the weight feels unbearable, when the struggle leaves you broken, will you hold on or will you let go? Jacob clung through the pain until blessing came. Would you? If you believe this story still speaks today, if you believe God still meets us in the struggles of life, then don't walk away unchanged. Subscribe now, because these lessons are not just history, they're lifelines. Don't miss the truths that could shape your destiny. And I want to hear from you. Would you have let go? Or would you have held on until the blessing came? Share your answer below in the comments. Be honest. Your words may encourage someone else who is fighting their own midnight battle. Jacob said, "I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved." But was it truly God? Was it an angel? Was it the pre-incarnate Christ himself? Scripture leaves us with the mystery. And perhaps that is the point. For the greatest encounters with God are not the ones we can fully explain, but the ones that leave us forever changed. And so, when your Peniel comes, and you find yourself wrestling in the dark, remember Jacob's story. Remember the limp, and remember the blessing. The night may leave its mark on you, but it may also give you the very identity you were created for.